we'll move to remove the service plug. Now, remember, working on high voltage vehicle, you will need to use a rubber glove. And let's go to the back where the high voltage battery is located. Now, the 12 volt battery for this vehicle is located beside the high voltage battery. If you can see, the high voltage battery is the bigger one and it is located under the rear passenger seat. We have removed the seat for this demonstration. Now, I said in the beginning that before working on high voltage vehicles, you need to ensure that the tools that you are using are in working condition. So one of the tools that you will be using, of course, will be the rubber glove and also the multimeter. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to test this rubber glove again, just to make sure that it is in, there's no leakage. Good. There's no leakage, so we're going to wear, but we're not going to wear it now because we need to test the multimeter. And how do we test the multimeter? What we can do, early on we had tested that the probes are in working condition. Just to make sure, we are testing it on the 12 volt battery because we know that it's 12 volt. So any volt that is higher or lower could suggest that this multimeter is faulty, right? So it's like a typical test on any 12 volt. We need to turn to DC volt because battery all contains direct current. So the red is positive and the black is negative. So what we do is that we're going to just put it at a terminal and we're going to take a reading. So we have 12.06 volt DC, which is good because it tells us that the battery is of good condition and the voltmeter, or rather the multimeter, is working. Now, even before we work on high voltage vehicle, we need to test whether there's any electric leakage. So we'll be testing on the housing of the high voltage battery. And same thing, what we'll do is that we'll turn it to volt DC. And because the high voltage current, it runs separate from the body of the car. In other words, it runs as a circuit by itself. So whenever you test any high voltage component, you need to test on the component itself, right? And not on the component, one probe on the component and one probe on the body of the car. You will never get a reading, right? You get an incorrect reading. So you'll be testing on the component itself. Now I'm going to test on the housing to see if there's any high voltage leakage. So we'll just place both the probes on the housing itself and we should get a 0, which we do. And we're going to test it on another location, right? So we get a 0 as well. So this tells us that there's no electric leakage, high voltage leakage onto the housing. Now before you remove the service plug, the first thing that you need to do is that you need to remove the negative terminal from the 12 volt battery. Right, so we've removed the 12 volt, and because this terminal is metal and we want it to be safe, we're going to isolate it with rubber cloth, with rubber glove, so that it doesn't come into contact with any metal part or metal object like your bolts and your nuts. So once we do this, we are ready to remove our service plug. So we'll wear our orange rubber glove. Now when we're removing any component of the high voltage, any connectors onto the high voltage, we need to remember to use the one hand rule, which means that you only touch with one hand. You do not touch with one hand and the other hand on the body of the car, because what will happen is that you're going to complete the electric circuit where current will run through your body onto ground if there is any electric leakage, right? So we're going to remove the service plug. And the service plug is the one in orange. You can see. So it acts like a main fuse. Once it removes, we will be effectively isolating the high voltage system. And the manufacturers built, or rather how they connect all these high voltage components is by going in a standard fixed way. So in other words, there's only one way that you can pull it out or disconnect, and there's only one way that you can connect back, because this is an added protection that manufacturers use to prevent any electric shock to a person in the event that it is connected wrongly. So in case you put and you can't fit, you do not try to force it in, because you're going to break the connecting pins and the protector, right? So just remember, there's going to be one way in and one way out. So I'm going to remove the service plug. And this is what the service plug looks like. There are two pins which are covered by a hard plastic. So we're going to leave the service plug here, because we will need this service plug to remove the locking pin before we can actually remove the high voltage battery housing and subsequently remove the high voltage battery from the vehicle itself. So this is a locking pin. So now we have already removed the service plug. So what we need to do next is that we need to wait for 15 or 20 minutes to let the residual current in the inverter be drained off.